Hello, and welcome to another episode of Everyday Black History. Now, today on Everyday Black History, we're going to be talking about a brother by the name of Garret Morgan. And Garret Morgan was an African American inventor, entrepreneur, and community leader. He invented an early version of the gas mask called a smoke hood. He created one of the first traffic lights that included a third warning system, which is standard today, as well as hair care products and other things, while possessing only a sixth grade education. Now, just to give a little background history on Garret Morgan, he was born in Claysville. He was the son of two slaves, Sidney Morgan and Elizabeth Reed, and as mentioned, he only possessed a sixth grade education. And so he moved at the age of 16 to Cincinnati, Ohio, for employment. Now, he was a handyman during his teenage years, working for landowners in Cincinnati. And he was fortunate enough to be able to hire a tutor at that time so that he can continue his studies while he was working as a handyman in Cincinnati. In 1895, he moved to Cleveland, where he began repairing sewing machines for a clothing manufacturer. And the experience with repairing sewing machines got his interest in how things work and how to repair things. His first invention, which was developed during this early time, was a belt fastener for sewing machines. And throughout this period of time, before he got his first patent, which was in 1912 later on, he was slowly building his reputation in Cleveland for his skill in being able to fix things. In 1907, after nearly a decade of fixing sewing machines, he opened up his own sewing machine and shoe repair shop. And in 1908, he started the Cleveland Association for Colored Men after being more conscious of his heritage and wanting to help more people like himself. In 1909, he and his wife, Mary Ann, expanded their business ventures by opening a shop called Morgan's Cut Rate Ladies Clothing Store. And the shop had 32 employees. They made coats, suits, dresses, and other clothing. And it was a thriving business in Cleveland. Around 1910, his business in repairing other people's inventions waned, but it developed an interest in himself to create his own things, invent his own things. Now, he was the subject of a newspaper article in Cleveland, Ohio, because he was involved in a heroic rescue in 1916 of workers that were trapped within a water intake tunnel 50 feet beneath Lake Erie. He performed his rescue using a hood fashioned to protect his eyes from smoke and featured a series of air tubes that hung near the ground to draw clean air beneath the rising smoke. This enabled him to lengthen his ability to endure the inhospitable conditions of a smoke-filled room. Garret Morgan is also credited and known for being one of the first African Americans in Cleveland to own an automobile, which is interesting. But now, the smoke hood was completed in 1912, and he received a patent for it that year. The invention of the smoke hood precipitated. He created a company, called the National Safety Device Company, which he used to promote and to sell the smoke hood in 1914. Now, no sales figures have been found to say how much the smoke hood sold, but we know he used guerrilla marketing campaigns. He went out to the people, met the people directly, going to different venues, demonstrating how the hood worked by actually putting on the hood, and going into a smoke-filled teepee to demonstrate how it worked. Although there are no sales figures, it is known that after his rescue in 1916 of those workers in a tunnel, that fire departments all over the world made orders for his smoke hood. So you can imagine he did pretty well. He also sold hair care products. He invented and sold hair care products, and launched a company called the G.A. Morgan Hair Refining Company. He also got a patent for a hair straightening cream, hair coloring, as well as a hair straightening comb as well. Even later on in his life, when he developed glaucoma and couldn't really see and had poor health, he was still working on his inventions. And one of his last inventions was a self-extinguishing cigarette, which used a small plastic pellet filled with water placed just before the filter. So even in his old age, he still was inventing things that was way ahead of his time. He died on July 27th, 1963 at the age of 86. So you can imagine just from his inventions that he did very well for himself. We're going to have another episode dedicated specifically to his inventions because he invented a lot of things, as mentioned, and things that weren't even covered in this episode of Everyday Black History. So stay tuned as we'll be having another episode where we cover Garret Morgan's inventions. But Garret Morgan, we thank you for your contribution and we salute you. And that concludes this episode of Everyday Black History. Please tune in again as we'll be having another episode dedicated to his inventions as well as other institutions. So stay tuned.